So when we were journalists, this tactic was called put a face on every story. So again, say we get statistics of homelessness in the city where we work as a journalist. We could put those statistics out about how bad it is. We could talk to the people on the street who are serving those individuals who are affected by homeless, or we could find somebody, who is homeless or has experienced homelessness, and we could tell that story.
Welcome to the Storycraft Podcast for Storytellers. I'm your host, Meg Adams, and I'm here to help you explore how stories shape our connections. Wondering how stories help you network in advance? Looking to bridge online and face-to-face worlds, foster understanding, and ignite innovation? Look no further. Whether you're a leader, communicator, educator, or just love a good story, join us for actionable insights and real talk with professional storytellers, all aimed at helping you build stronger, better connections.
All right, you guys, I am really excited for this conversation. Poor Kyle has heard it a lot of times. Today we're going to be talking about what a story is, what an effective story is, and what it is not. So as someone who has studied storytelling, I was a journalist, then went into higher ed, studied storytelling as part of my PhD, now teach it. I do think a lot about storytelling and how to be an effective storyteller. So that's where my opinion on this comes from. I just want to preface by saying that. Also, to put the conversation into context, a lot of you who are in marketing, PR, education, maybe you want to be a thought leader, maybe you're a small business owner, organization, and you are listening to this podcast because you want to be a better storyteller. Some of you, like me, may struggle to define, what the heck is storytelling? So this podcast is for you because I want you to use this when you're hiring somebody, when you're thinking about your marketing, your branding, your messaging, all of it. So I want you to use these pieces of advice that I give you as sort of like a test. You can take each of these as bullet points and weigh these against a story, whatever that story is. Because again, storytelling is this very ambiguous term. It's very nuanced. And I think there are some offenders out there, especially when it comes to marketing or branding or public relations. There are a lot of people who call themselves storytellers or say that they're telling stories, and maybe some of the aspects of what they're doing are hitting the nail. They're like, yes, okay, this is working, this looks great, but is it really a story? Once you weigh it against these pieces that I'm going to tell you, you'll be able to say, you know what, that's not exactly what I would call an effective story. Here's what we can do to make it more effective. So this can give you the language to work with. Again, like I said, maybe some outside vendors, maybe yourself. These are things that you can do to make sure that when you want to tell a story, it's going to be effective. It's going to land with your audience. So that's where I want to begin this conversation. I'm going to give you these tips. So what a story is not. A story is not a video with really cool shots one after another and a random soundbite. That's not a narrative. That's really cool video shots or photography or drone footage spliced together. That's cool. It's not that it's wrong or bad. It just might not as effectively touch your audience in the way that you want. So that's number one offender. Number two, a story is not a chronological list of events or a timeline. So I see this one a lot too on websites. When I go to a website, it'll say our story and it'll say we were founded in 1925 and in 1955 we sold blah, 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 blah. Okay, it can have elements. Now that could be the start. That could be the bones of a good story. But a great effective story is going to use emotion. It's going to have characters. So we're going to get into this. So I say all that to say, if you are out there and I know you're listening to this podcast because you want to be a better storyteller. Study some of the basics of storytelling. Listen to the pieces that I'm going to give you today, the outline that I'm going to give you today, all the elements that a successful story has. Keep listening to this podcast. Listen to professional storytellers. Go figure it out and heighten your practice, because one thing about storytelling too that everyone needs to remember is that it is a craft. So I don't want this to seem like I'm coming down on people like, oh, that's crap. It's not a story. You're getting out there and you're trying, and that's amazing. And we all get better over time. This is one easy way to do it. Okay, so here's the goods, as I promised. Okay, if you want to make a story effective, it needs to have these elements. Again, just my opinion. The first thing to remember if you're telling a story, you want to reach an audience, it has to be about a person. Now, why? Why, Meg? Why does it have to be about a person? Well, this comes from neuroscience. This comes from how we're wired as human beings. We are physiologically wired to want to connect with other people. Stories, told well, are the vehicles that help us connect to one another and build community. We need community to survive. We've evolved over time because we've built communities. Before there were books, we learned how to birth babies and grow crops because we spoke with our neighbors, with our community. And we remembered things because they told us as stories. There's lots of neuroscience on this. I don't want to belabor it, but that is number one. Person to person, connection from human to human. It's how we evolved. If you want to take advantage of like the physiological benefits of storytelling, you should focus on that. Tell a story about a person, or tell your story about you. So this leads to larger, deeper connections. So if you're a brand, so maybe you're listening to this and you're a marketing director or public relations director or social media manager for a company, an organization, or a brand, just make sure that the stories that you tell focus on people. Maybe this could be a client testimonial. Maybe this could be a spotlight on an employee. Maybe this could be the founder story, right? But you want each of those stories to focus around people or characters. So again, we relate. This is because we relate one-to-one to other people. Love what you're hearing on this podcast? Consider booking me to speak at your next event. Dive further into the transformative power of storytelling with my keynote. Tell better stories, speak up, stand out, and build community. In a world that often amplifies our differences, my talk invites you to embrace genuine connections. Break free from the echo chambers and discover the art of storytelling. Learn how to share your own narrative, listen actively, and foster communities that flourish on shared experiences. Check out the show notes to learn more about how to book a talk for your next event. So, another tip about when you're telling stories about people, the reason why this works too is because it's easier to understand things through a singular lens. What do I mean by that? So when we were journalists, this tactic was called put a face on every story. So again, say we get statistics of homelessness in the city where we work as a journalist. We could put those statistics out about how bad it is. We could talk to the people on the street who are serving those individuals who are affected by homeless, or we could find somebody, who is homeless or has experienced homelessness, and we could tell that story. Now, it needs to be done in a sensitive manner. There are lots of things to think about with that particular example that I gave you, but hopefully you get the idea there. It is going to be more impactful to understand that story through that person's eyes. It'll help us relate to it more than we would relate to a statistic. I feel like if you're listening to this podcast, you probably have heard that over and over again. There's a reason why. Because when you see things through someone else's eyes, through their perspective, that is when the power of storytelling kicks in, okay? So make sure you do that. Another way to be really successful at this tactic, to tell a story about a person, is I like to flip a narrative. So we'll go back to homelessness. Any way that you can flip a perspective or a stigma or a stereotype, that's going to be a successful story, because we as human beings are multifaceted. We have so many layers to us. We are characters, right? All of us are characters going through life. And if you can find a character that lets you see that nuance, lets you see the person that they are as close to like real, so with a lack of performance, or as close to who they are that person is probably going to make people think a little differently about what they expected to see. I don't know if that makes sense. Another way to put it would be, we all expect a certain type of character because we all have preconceived notions of other people. Anytime you can surprise people, or show that person, show their depth, show them outside of the stereotype or how we expect to see them, people will hang on to that. We love those types of stories. And those are the types of stories about people that are really fun to work on and be creative with. So I spent a lot of time on number 1. But if you see a video like I have a few months ago of flying coffee cups that says, here's our story, you're like, no. Like, we got to make this better. How are we going to make this story, I'm using air quotes if you're listening, about flying coffee cups actually a story? You could say now, well, it has to be about a person. Yay, okay. Number 2, this kind of goes into number 1, but it's nuanced. So like, a good, effective story is nuanced. Again, it's going to capture our attention. We all know that people's attention spans are depleting at a rapid rate, but that's because we all have so many different stories or messages coming at us every single day. How is yours going to stand out? Well, give us the details. Don't make this story super highly produced, or again, if it sticks to the script that we're all used to, there's nothing new, exciting, or unique to that story. And it doesn't necessarily have to be new, but it has to be unique. And every single person that you meet, if you're a good interviewer, if you're good with people, you're gonna pull those specific details out from them, and you're gonna help them tell their story and help people see them in a way that is exciting, that is going to capture attention. Which leads me to number 3, which is your story, along with those specific details and being focused on a person, and that, again, surprising people about that person. You want to have some type of shared universal experience as part of your story. So when someone's telling a story, when you're focusing on that person, what you want to get at is whatever emotion or lesson, I like to use, or reflection that person has, is something that we can all take with us. So there has to be something that your listener or viewer, or the person you're speaking to, there has to be something in it for them. So what is that? Well, the best way to do that would be to have some, again, universal theme, lesson, reflection in your story, and then bring that out by using those specific details, by helping them understand, oh, I see this through someone else's eyes, but I can connect, or that's how we develop empathy through storytelling, is through that shared universal theme. Okay, we had to pause the podcast to let you in on this opportunity. If you're ready to elevate your brand storytelling, don't miss our training, Tell Better Stories, led by me, a seasoned television journalist and PR professor, and Kyle, an on-air meteorologist and video storytelling expert. This workshop unveils our secrets to craft compelling, personal-driven narratives that resonate with your audience. Learn our distinct approach that puts people first and brands second, leveraging 6 storytelling elements for maximum impact. Walk away with actionable strategies, tactics, and a clear process to replicate success in any organization. Check out the show notes to learn more about this offer, or reach out to homeplacecreative@gmail.com. I use the example all the time. I think everyone has experienced a time where they've maybe watched a movie. Maybe you've experienced this, and you're like, you get to the end of like the 2.5 hours and you're like, oh my gosh, like what's the point? Why did I even waste my time? That's probably because the movie went nowhere. It didn't get to that universal lesson. It didn't get to that theme. And the movies, or the stories that you really remember, are the ones where you really connect to. And so you connect your experience to that experience around that universal reflection, lesson, theme, whatever you want to call it. But we get excited and we get entertained and we stick with the story because it's nuanced and it has those specific details that, again, are going to be different and unique to every human whose stories you tell, including yours, right? Okay. The other piece is it needs to have a narrative arc. So it needs to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. Every good story has a hook. It has something that draws us in. It's, again, takes us through. We follow the character to the middle, and then we get a nice, satisfying end. Kendra Hall, who's one of my favorite storytelling teachers, she had a great way to describe this, beginning, middle, and end. It's so simple. Think of the beginning as normal. We're here. Everybody starts somewhere. Every story starts somewhere. Every character is in a normal space. Then the middle is where something happens. Kendra calls it an explosion, right? Something happens to change up the character's normal. And then the ending is, you guessed it, it's the new normal. So what does the character learn? How are they better? What in their life is changed, right? It doesn't have to be for the better, by the way. But there has to be a new normal at the end. So that's another way to think of narrative arc. But any story that's going to capture your audience's attention is going to have those three pieces. Okay. So that's it. Those are my tips. Those are the very basic tips for you. So next time, again, you are working with someone, working on your own projects, working with your team, please use, I hope this helps. I really do, because we are here, this podcast is here to help everybody become better. And for me, I want to go to your website and I want to see your story and I want to connect to it. I want to be engaged. I want to feel, like I just said, I want to feel that connection to you and I want to support you. So don't waste these opportunities. Don't waste these opportunities to tell better stories. They matter. This is how people will connect. This is how you build trust and credibility in your brand. And you have to tell stories over and over and over. But I think using these tenets or these elements, making sure that they're all there, will help you be more effective in your storytelling. Again, I hope this helps you. These are the basics. But if you want more, please let me know. Let me know if this is helpful to you. If anything was unclear, if you have any questions, reach out to me. I want to know. I want to hear from you. I want to have these conversations because, like I said, the whole goal of this podcast is to help you become a better storyteller, help you become a more effective storyteller. So you can reach out to me. I'm online at Dr. Meg Adams everywhere. And my email is megan@homeplacecreativeco.com. So looking forward to hearing from you. And do share this episode with a friend or a fellow colleague if it was helpful to you. Thanks. We're so glad you've listened to this podcast episode. If you liked it, would you mind doing us a favor? Share this episode with someone who would be interested in the topic too. We're on a mission to help everyone become a better storyteller. And don't forget to subscribe to the show to get updated every time we release a new episode. Each and every episode is produced, hosted, and edited by us, Meg and Kyle Adams at Home Place Creative. Happy storytelling.